Semen retention makes your face more attractive. This is perhaps one of the most contentious statements regarding the practice, and many argue that there is simply no evidence in support of this. I think there is strong evidence that semen retention improves the face, gives you a more youthful appearance and attractive look. I will present this evidence to you as clearly and logical as possible. The first major facial advantage a retainer has over a sensualist is youthfulness. Youth is a major component of facial attractiveness and underlies many of the specific characteristics people look for in judging attractiveness. A man retaining his semen also retains his germline cells, that is, the cells in the body responsible for reproduction. Use of the germline accelerates aging, and halting or removal of the germline slows aging. This has been found across multiple studies and forms the basis of germline theory, which I have explained in depth in previous videos. A man that ages slower retains his youthful appearance for significantly longer. If you take two twins, the first twin sexually abstains and does not utilize the function of his germline, whilst the other twin releases daily, keeping his germline cells in constant use. According to biology, that releasing twin will age faster. In some organisms, removal or ablation of the germline has almost doubled the life expectancy of the organism. In a study on Korean eunuchs, the halting of the germline, which castration entails, resulted in an increased lifespan of 14 to 19 years. Given the average lifespan at that time, this could be up to 40% longer life. When a man is on the path to a 40% longer life, try to visualize his progression of aging compared to a man who will live 19 years less. The shorter-lived man's rate of aging would be accelerated. In comparison to his long-lived twin, he would appear to age before his time. The signs of youth would fade more quickly, and the signs of degeneration and aging would set in sooner. Naturally, this would result in lower attractiveness, and the face is the most telling indicator of this degeneration, for it is the face we first look to when judging someone's approximate age. It reveals the most information. Again, to clarify, in historical medicine, consumption was the term often used for what we now call tuberculosis, but it also had a much broader meaning that was often used: a premature wasting of the organism. Consumption was known as the wasting disease. Masturbation and sexual activity were thought to consume the germline cells, and germline theory suggests that the use of these reproductive resources accelerates aging. For men in particular, gonadal activity is believed to speed up degeneration. In line with what both germline and summer theories imply, this could be considered premature aging. In the past, those who aged prematurely were often diagnosed with consumption. Interestingly, many of the old books on semen retention cited consumption as a result of self-pollution, that is, masturbation. So, in short, by conserving the germline, a man slows his aging, retains his youthful features, and his face naturally appears more attractive. We come into the world with a certain amount of vitality measured out to us as our inheritance, which, other things being equal, determines the length of our lives. When this is consumed, we cease to live. It may be properly consumed, or it may be squandered, either by a slow process or suddenly by some unwise act. Every thought we think, every movement we make, every emotion we indulge in, every stroke of work we do, uses up a certain amount of this vitality. This, however, is a necessary consumption. Every time we violate a law of health, we consume a portion of vitality. Insofar, we help to break down our constitution. Every cold we take makes us less able to stand exposure, and weakens the parts affected. Every sickness, every overstrained nerve, every overburdened organ, every departure from nature's laws encroaches upon our vitality, weakens the constitution, and finally breaks down the health. Each organ of the body has a separate work, yet each is designed by a wise creator to cooperate with all the others for the good of the whole body. Any single act or any habit that interferes with the normal action of any organ injures not only that organ and restricts its function, but also impedes the work of the body as a whole. Any act or habit that interferes with the complete development of the body or any of its parts will affect the activity of the brain and energy of the mind and will, making them weak and sluggish. Someone has said, "A sound mind in a sound body is sound logic," which statement sounds perfectly reasonable. This connection to sexual activity draining the vital powers was noted in previous eras by many writers. One book from the 19th century wrote, "What then must be expected from the terrible sin of masturbation or self-pollution? Just at the time when nature requires, imperatively requires, every part and particle of its sustenance and support, the greater portion is drained off and lost. This cannot continue long without painful consequences, and the system speedily becomes debilitated, and then still less able to go on with the great work on hand." Let us once more examine the actual results of this disgusting habit. From it arises debility, pallor, nervousness, loss of sleep, confusion of ideas, aversion to exercise, listlessness, idleness, pains in the head, melancholy, forebodings, voracity, fear, and loss of memory. How then, I would ask, can any man, how then can anyone expect nature to work under such disadvantages? Sleep, that great restorer, whose effects act like charms upon the body and mind, cease to soothe and invigorate the wretched onanist's body, rather by its fitfulness and fever acting as an exhausting object. Exercise, so necessary to the young, is partially or wholly neglected by the victim, whilst that activity and buoyancy of spirit, so necessary to enliven and push on the works of nature, is dead, sullen, and gloomy. The consequence of all this is that if the wretched victim escape the actual immediate punishment attendant upon his excesses, he grows up to be a man, but with his vital agents already weakened and ready to fall into the jaws of disease in whatever shape it comes. And when we consider how mere inattention and carelessness may superinduce this terrible affection, how much more certain will it be in its effects upon those who by actual self-abuse have weakened and impaired every part and parcel of their godlike frames. Let everyone in every walk of life remember this great truth, that nature will demand a terrible retribution upon all who abuse her. If you contain yourself temperately and soberly, obeying her laws and respecting her dictates, she will then be to you a guard and a defense. When sickness or accident overtakes you, she will be the first to bear you back to health and happiness. But if you abuse her, not only will she be apt not to defend you when assailed, but she may even herself be the first to deliver you up passively to the first vital affection which may attack you. Let man, and especially let youth, preserve with care the greatest treasure Providence can give, and then bestow that same robust health to his offspring. Another major advantage of retaining testicular secretions is the increased capacity to invest in secondary male sex traits. One thing we should know about a man's manly traits is that they are a very costly investment to his organism. In fact, this is perhaps why men usually die before women. The single biggest energetic cost of the manly traits is his musculature. Muscle tissue is costly to build and maintain, and because men naturally carry more lean mass due to testosterone, their bodies burn more calories daily just to sustain it. The testosterone increase that drives male behaviors, such as aggression and libido, are also highly costly to the organism. An often overlooked fact of testosterone is that it is highly costly to maintain, and it induces more oxidative stress in higher levels than in those with lower levels. The burden of testosterone is significant, and though low testosterone is also detrimental, excess testosterone is many times more degenerative. We see this in biology, where males often degenerate during mating season due to excess gonadal activity and testosterone production. In contrast, low testosterone is far less harmful, producing only minor effects such as slightly higher bone loss. And if testosterone is a burden, one may wonder then, why are high test men more valued and often seen as more attractive in society? That is because a man who develops naturally high test traits displays his body's abundance of vital energy to sustain such traits. That is, his high test is a sign that his organism is strong enough to handle the burden of developing such traits, and is thus healthy, strong, and an ideal candidate for reproduction. Those born of a weaker constitution do not develop the manly traits to the same degree simply because their bodies cannot afford to expend extra resources towards those traits. A weakened organism may need to invest more in the summer, that is, the cells, bloods, and organs. To clarify an often confused point here, this is not to say that low testosterone is healthy, but rather that high testosterone is costly, and only men with a strong enough constitution can naturally sustain it and develop masculine traits, though effort and training can allow others to build muscle as well. Although testosterone carries a physiological burden on the organism, masculine physical characteristics in men are positively correlated with measures of long-term medical health, as the men that often develop these traits are of stronger body constitution to start with. In countries where survival and health outcomes are lower, attractiveness to higher testosterone males appears to be stronger. In countries where health markers and longevity are higher, this attraction to high test males appears to be lower. This has been observed in cross-cultural studies comparing preferences for high testosterone males and national longevity data. It's also interesting to note that populations with lower average testosterone often exhibit higher longevity, whereas populations with higher average testosterone tend to have lower longevity. Again, if we have two twins and one releases while one abstains, the one conserving his reproductive energies should have more to contribute towards the development of his secondary sex traits, whereas the one depleted in secretions would become more feminized. There is no conclusive proof here, but there is plenty of evidence. Those that do not produce testicular secretions, such as castrates, were historically known for becoming more feminine. In some historical accounts, certain indigenous communities would assign a female role to a selected male, and through practices such as repeated ejaculation, he could become more effeminate, both physically and in character. You may notice that some men around you look very masculine and perhaps more attractive than the average man. What we often overlook is that to develop these masculine traits requires much of our vital energy. Greater reproductive investment drives higher testosterone production, and testosterone drives the growth of male traits. pulling energy from the germline system and the summer. The more you invest in reproduction, the more energy you burn, and the faster you age. Many writings of the past attributed the man who was young in years but old in appearance to be affected by the consequences of excessive sensuality. Though this isn't a mainstream view today, much of the aforementioned biology does support this view. The semen being out of the body, the sexual penalty comes apace. The penalty for this loss of semen is so far-reaching and so concealed from the body of people of the present day that we do not know the exact spots to look for it. But we tell you, when you see paralysis, palsy, apoplexy, rheumatism, brain softening, bent shoulders and haggard face, when you observe a young old man and the dried-up young lady, in all of these cases, and in dozens of others, you may set it down that there have been sexual losses and a waste of the bodily substance from the sexual orgasm. You will see this penalty all around you, and there is no place where you may go but you will see the fruits of this sexual indulgence to excess. The penalty may be denied, and all these diseases may be attributed to every other cause under the sun, but you will be right in laying it at the proper place, and that is to the sexual drain which has sapped the blood corpuscles of the victim before you. We assure you nothing can be so very enervating as this sexual excess, and any sexual mating is an excess, providing it is not for the purpose of having children. The penalty for the disobedience of this law is in the shortened lives and the increased amount of disease which are everywhere around us. We must understand that any practice that works to shorten our life will induce the signs of aging and unattractiveness faster. If reproductive activity is shortening our lifespan, then it is also deteriorating our looks. We will look old, more worn out, more haggard, and overall less attractive when depleting this energy. This is not some bold, controversial statement. If you look at the principal concepts as discussed in biology, it is simply a logical conclusion. For those looking to preserve their youthful appearance and attractiveness, then the avoidance of needless reproductive expenditure should be deeply considered. You are paying for the use of your sexual energy with your own life.